Is the Dagda a good god? Well, Dagda agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And I'm a Dagda guy. You may or may not know this about me, but the god that I feel most connected to and have explored and invested much of my pagan education, my kind of awareness of and relationship in is the Dagda. And the Dagda is often referred to as the good god. But what does that mean? And why is he called the good god? Is it because he is just always good? Is it because he's always right? Is it because he is some moral or ethical kind of leader or paragon in his pantheon? No. And there's a number of stories that help indicate why that is. But there's also a very clear story as to why the name Good God, which is a translation of Dagda, actually sticks to him. So when we talk about the Dagda, much like all of the information we have about the Tuatha Danann, because he is one of the gods of the Tuatha Danann that came into Ireland following the invasion of the Firbolg and before the invasion of the Milesians, who become the Gael people. So the Dagda is a very unique individual in many ways because he is one of the few people, in fact, it's only him and the Morrigan, that are actually referred to as the. It's on Dagda and on Morrigan. It's not on Nuada, it's not on Lugh, like it's not the Lugh or the Gwivnu or the Deancairt. They are just Lugh, Deancairt, Gwivnu, Nuada. So many of the other deities are just listed by their name and their epithets. Of course, their descriptors or their after names. The Dagda has many names and many epithets, but he and the Morrigan are the only two that are referred to as the, as in the Dagda and the Morrigan. Now, I'm not going to get into exploring all of the ins and outs of that. And if you're interested on my thoughts or perceptions on that, maybe let us know in the comments. But when it comes to good God and the translation of Dagda as good hand or goodly God, that's why he is called the Dagda. And the story where we look for that is this one here. Now, what I'm doing is I'm holding up a copy um, of the Cost Moytura, or the Second Battle of Moytura, and this translation is done by the amazing Morgan Timler. It's a resource we definitely recommend at the Irish Pagan School, and I would recommend picking up. It's not a large manuscript. It is a really, really good and insightful translation of this particular story. And in that particular story, we have the arrival of Lugh into Tara. Now, at this point, Nuada is back to being king of the Tuatha Danann. The Bress, the deposed king, has been kicked out, essentially, and he's off raising war with the Fomorians, trying to get them to invade. So Nuada sees Lugh and sees all that Lugh is capable of, and he agrees to abdicate the seat of kingship in favor of Lugh. But that's not where it ends. Straight away, Nuada then leaves Tara with the Dagda and Oma, and they go into conference. And there's a naming of the place. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it right, but essentially he goes into this year-long conference with the two brothers, but then they call two more to join them, which is Gwivnu and Deancairt, and then they spend a further year, and this is then referred to as the meeting of the men of the goddess. And so these core figures of the Tuatha Danann have conference and they have a conversation and they explore and they consider and they think about what's going to happen next for their people in Ireland. And what happens from there is there's a further expansion to the meeting. Nuada calls for the cupbearers, the sorcerers, the hospitaliers. Like he calls for a meeting, a bigger gathering of influential people to this conference. And the purpose of which is to find out what is it that they will offer to deal with or to combat the invasion that is coming from the Fomorians. So we get a lovely list of these abilities. And so the cupbearers promise to call upon the names of all of the rivers and lakes in Ireland and by their name hide all the water sources from the Fomorians so that they will not find a drink of water upon the island. Next, we hear that I think it's the Druids, no, maybe it's the sorcerers. there's different, like the names of the groups are interchangeable depending on the translations, but essentially they say they promise that they'll call on the names in the mountains, and by the name of the mountains they will then have the mountains cast their rocks against the Fomorian forces, crushing them and destroying them. And then the last group is I believe it's the Druids, who will promise to rain fire from the sky. They then also promise that they will bind the urine inside the Fomorian invaders and their horses so that sickness comes upon them, and that every breath they take in Ireland will diminish their valor, whereas every breath that the Tuatha De Danann warriors take will increase their valor and their courage, even should the battle last unto 7 years. So these are all the big promises. These are all big asks. These are all big things in order to be able to provide, like knowing the names of every lake and river in the island, knowing the names of all the mountains, such that you have authority over them, that they would fall to your will. And this is where we find the Dagda step in. And he steps up and says, "The deeds that you have all promised, I will take on myself and see them done." At this point, in one version of the story, Nuada says it. In another version, it's pretty much everyone. Everyone acclaims that he is the Dagda. He is the good hand or the goodly one or the good god because he is their god of druidry. It said that all forms of occult and druidic knowledge were his to command. In other stories, when we talk about how he gets the magic club, he lists off the things he has authority over when he gives assurances that he will return the club. And the things he lists is sun and moon, land and sea. So he has authority over the land, which includes the mountains. He has authority over the sea, which includes the waters. And then again, rains of fire from the sky, sun, moon, celestial bodies, that kind of arrangement. So the Dagda promises that he's going to do all of these things, and they call him the good God. So does this make him good? No. So when we look at good and the definition of his name in that it is good by skill and by capability. Essentially, when they call him the good God, they're saying he's good at it. He's good at everything. And that's why cupbearers, sorcerers, druids, all of them are happy to step aside and leave it to the Dagda. When he says it's going to be done, it's going to be done because he is capable of all of those things. He's good at all of those things. Now, when we look at morality and the concepts of morality, of course, we have to be cautious not to enforce our own views of modern morality on ancient myth and ancient society. But he does in the story where he gains the magic club straight up kill people in order to gain and seize the power to bring his child back to life. Is that morally good? Is it not? Now, you could make the argument that violence being part of his human nature or violence being part of nature, when the first battle of Moytura is going on, the Dagda on one of the days leads a charge on the left flank of the field and opens up a gap so that 150 warriors can fall into him and fall behind him, like can breach the lines of the Bullock that they're fighting in that first war. You don't open a gap by charging a battle line unless you're going over or through people. The Bullock in that context. So is that morally good? He has a relationship with another person, with a person who's wedded to someone else, Boan, and she conceives a child and bears the child Angus. Now, of course, he stops the sun moving for 9 months, so it passes in a day. So Angus can be conceived and born and delivered. But where are the values of good and morality? And that's why we need to maybe put those concepts aside when we're talking about divinity in this context. So when we talk about the Dagda as being a good god, it's not that he is some morally driven figure who demands obedience or demands you follow said certain commandments in some ways. Now, later on in other stories, when we see him as king in Ireland and one of his other children, Aed, is slain, he's king. He has to give a judgment and he has to give a kingly judgment. And of course, everyone around him is calling for him to kill the murderer, to take the life as payment for the life that was taken from his family. But the Dagda doesn't give that judgment. Instead, having carried his son's body on his back himself to try and figure out what happened and capture the murderer, he then gives judgment that the murderer is to carry the body of his son until he can find a fit stone for him to be buried under, which the person does. And in that way, they redeem themselves. So the grounds about morality and the ideas of it, like when he rules as king in Ireland, it says that Lugh, after the second battle of Moytura, rules in Ireland for 40 years as king. Dagda follows him to the seat of kingship and rules for 80 years. You don't rule for that length of time unless you are fit to rule, unless you're providing Ireland with kingly judgments, proper hospitality, and a good code of ethics and practice in keeping with the other world and the sovereignty of the island. Because we see in all of the other stories how those who betray the sovereignty of the island lead it to becoming a wasteland, or those who don't give proper judgment, like Bress, find themselves removed from the seat of kingship because they're not in keeping with the right culture of the people in that island. So the Dagda is referred to as the good god. He is good at it. He's good at everything. Of course, this then throws up the Kant's question, really, which I have not found an answer for personally, but maybe we can wrap up and I'll leave you with this question as well. Because in the second battle of Moytura, in the Cath Moytura, Lugh comes to Tara. And so he comes to Tara and Nuad is sitting in his hall and Lugh is refused access. He's told you may not enter unless you kind of list what skill you have upon you in service of the tribe. And so Lugh lists off his many skills, and he's listing this. I'm a leech, which is a surgeon and a doctor, and they're like, we don't need you. We have Dean Kecht inside. He's like, oh well, I'm a cupbearer, and they're like, yeah, we have all these four cupbearers inside. We kind of don't need another cupbearer. And he's like, I'm a brazier, like as in someone who cooks meats. And it's like, no, we don't need you. We have the best like meat cook inside. He's like, oh, I'm a carpenter. We have Luxa inside. I'm a jewel maker. We have like Cregina inside. Oh, well, I'm a Smith. He's like, we have fucking Gwivnu inside. Who are you? And so, for all of that, Lugh presenting his many, many skills, he then makes a statement which does get him access, which is there one person inside who has all of the skills? And that's where the gatekeepers, guys called Gamal and Kamal, are stumped. And they go into Nuada, who's sitting in kingship, and is like, listen, we have a guy outside who has all of the skills. He is Il Donach. He of many interlinked talents, because that's what Il Donach means. And so Nuada's like, yeah, bring him in. Now, of course, Lugh faces further challenges. He faces off in a feat of strength against Oma. He faces off in strategy and tactics, playing Fiachal against pretty much everyone. And then he plays the harps to show his skill with music and craft. At which point he goes to the seat of the sage, which is this seat in the Nuada's hall, which is for this individual, which had been left empty, who fulfills this access to knowledge, this reference, this abilities to serve all of the tribe in this multifaceted way. So the question that I currently don't have an answer for, but I am exploring as well, and maybe you'll let me know what you think about it, is if the Dagda had been in Tara that day, do you think Lugh would have gotten into the seat of the sage? Let me know what you think. But bringing it all back there, the Dagda, good God, yes, he is referred to as the good God on Dagda because he is capable of everything. He is good at everything. Hopefully that has been interesting and insightful for you. And if you would like to know more, all you got to do is go to irishpagan.school/free. Check out a free year's worth of free resources here and take some classes. I actually have a class on the Dagda there, Dagda domestic deity and hearth hero. So do check that out as well. And as ever, look after yourself. Take care. Agus Slán. Goodbye.